My van and Melonine, and well met indeed. I am Arachir Galadurathan, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome to Developer Diary, I think number 22, to give you an overview of everything that's gone on over the past few months. So there's a fair amount to talk about, and in complete contrast, or not contrast, but this is the first Developer Diary where everything that has happened, I haven't had a hand in any of it. I've been rather poor in keeping up with doing things that are on my to-do list for the mod over the past few months. But anyway, let's dive in without any further ado. We'll chop and change as usual, campaign first, and then we'll see some battle map aspects in the latter half. And there'll be a link in the description if you just are interested in seeing the battle map stuff and telling you where it changes. So first of all, for the High Elves, some minor changes. First of all, Mythlond is now their capital. Imladris was deemed to be a little too far away, and in order to aid corruption, given that most of your expansion will be from the west moving east, it felt that it would be better if the capital were over here. So Mythlond is indeed now the new capital. Imladris has also been changed and is no longer a town, it is now a castle, which means it supports recruitment better, because all castles recruit troops slightly faster, or they either recruit them faster or they recruit them with an instant experience bonus for some of the lesser units, some of the sort of more militia tier units. So Imladris is now a castle, which means it's much better for recruiting troops. There's been a few changes around Imladris. I think I mentioned last time you can now no longer pass on the eastern side of Imladris, but it's just worth mentioning again while we're talking about it. So the only way to get into Imladris now is to come down that little valley entrance just there. You can no longer bypass it and come from the east. This also helps the orcs out a little bit, as they constantly kept trying to walk past Imladris to go to Goblin Town from Zagkala, and they couldn't do that. So they would just walk into Imladris and then walk back out again, and then over and over and over, and it would mean that their troops were stuck not doing anything. But now they actually go round, so they can support themselves a bit better, which is good. Furthermore, speaking of Imladris, the Eldarinwe Tierno and Eldarinwe Roquen are no longer available at game start. So they were deemed far too late game in order to be able to come in at the start. We do sometimes like to make AOR units available straight away, just so that you get a taste of what you're going to get in the later game. But the Tierno and Roquen were too powerful for that, and so they are no longer available at start for Imladris. Also on the topic of High Elves, a minor point, Mythlond has lost one of its resources, specifically an iron resource, so it's a little poorer now, and Zagkala as well has had a gold resource exchanged for an iron resource, so that's slightly poorer as well. We also plan to bring in some other changes to try and weaken economically the position of the Gulf of Loon, so that as the High Elves it is financially a little more difficult than perhaps it is at the moment. So there may be some further changes to that, so stand by. But one of the biggest changes to the campaign map, and something I'm going to talk about on the campaign side, is the Northern Dunedain. But before we deal with that, you may have just glimpsed it a moment ago when I flipped up, but Mount Graham is now a city in the mountains itself. So Shadoon is what it was before. It's been moved and renamed after the mountain it now sits beside, and it now, as you can see, splits the mountain in half, making it much easier to pass through the mountains if you are playing as Angmar, if you're coming troops from Litash and you want to attack down to Imladris, and also just making it a bit more thematic and cooler. It also has a unique battle map, which we shall see in the second half of this video, but there is its current campaign strategy model, and that is what it looks like. This has been requested an awful lot. Many people asked for this change, so hopefully many of you will be pleased with that change. And then finally, I've spoken about it in the past as what we will do, but now I can give you information explicitly about what will actually happen as it has been changed. And this is the Beacon of Hope for the Northern Dunedain. And do forgive me if this is just repetition, but it's worthwhile mentioning it because now it's actually been done. So the following has happened for Northern Dunedain. All of the Beacon of Hope units, bar some exceptions, which we'll get onto in a moment, are now available as mercenary units rather than dependable recruited units from the regions. So the places you can still recruit troops are the same, and they are, of course, as follows. You can get Breeland units, you can get Ruadauer units, you cannot get any other Angmar units, that's a change that's been made. You can get Enedwythians, you can get Dunlendings, further south you get Rohirrim, you get Gondorians, you get Dolam Rothians. In the north you can get Men of the Anduin, Men of Dale, Men of Dorwinion, and then finally Rune, Kand, Harad, and I believe Aradnaim. No, I don't think Arad and Naim do, because they're obviously sworn enemies, so they're the one that you don't, if memory serves. But Khand, Harad and Rune you certainly do. And the requirements, however, to recruit these units are now script-based rather than region-based. So previously, if I was playing as the Northern Dunedain and I wanted Bree-land units, I simply had to hold a Bree-land region. Generally speaking, this is their starting regions. And of course, the intention behind this is so that if you liberate those regions from an enemy that has claimed them, you get those forces. But in practice, what it meant is that you could play the Northern Dunedain as solely evil and conquer Bree, conquer Dunland, Enedwaith, Rohan and Gondor, and train their troops. But now you get them through liberation. Or now you get them specifically through the mercenary. And the reason I say it's script-based is because there is now a check to ensure the following. For quote-unquote good nations, you must not be at war with them in order to train their troops. So now, as the Northern Dunedain, if I want Bree-land's forces, I move a general into Bree, I make sure I'm not at war with Bree, I can train those forces as mercenaries. Etc., etc. That follows for all, as I say, the good nations. Now, certain nations have no requirement whatsoever. So Dunland and Enedwaith, I think they might be the only two. It doesn't matter if you're at war with them. You will be able to train their troops because it's like Aragorn coming in and convincing them to side with him, for example. Certain nations require defeat. So the men of Rhudaur will only be available if Angmar have been defeated. But the men of Rhudaur will come from the barracks, so that's a difference there. So there's changes throughout. So for Rhudaur, you need to defeat Angmar, and then you build them from the barracks. For the good nations, you need to be not at war with them. You don't have to be allied with them, but you can't be at war with them. And the reason we've gone with the war, not allied, is because if a nation is defeated before you ever meet them, you of course cannot ally with them, which means that you can then never train their troops. This is a problem, for example, for places like Rohan and Gondor, where you may not go diplomatically to meet them early doors, and it might then cut you out of their roster late game. Now, the problem, of course, is that same thing does apply with wars, however. So if you are at war with Bree and then they are defeated, you are then set at war with them for ad infinitum, so you will never be able to train their troops. But that thematically seems to work better, because why would the Bree-landers suddenly start serving you who had a hand in their destruction? They just wouldn't do that. And you are not evil overlords that are forcing them to fight, so it didn't fit. So that is on you. If you do go to war with a nation whose troops you want to train, A, you just won't be able to train them at that time, but B, if they are then defeated whilst you're at war with them, you've locked yourself out from their troops. And that, I think, works a lot better than simply having not met them before and therefore not being able to get them. So as I say, Dunland and Enedwaith and Angmar, they're different in the way that they work. With Dunland and Enedwaith, you can train their troops at any time, so there's no restriction on them. Now, for the evil nations, Rune, Khand and Harad, it is the same as Angmar. You can only get their forces once they have been defeated. So when they have their own kings and rulers, they're not going to fight for Aragorn, but once they are defeated, Aragorn can then convince them to side with him, show them the error of their ways, etc. Now, of course, these places are absolutely miles away, and you're unlikely to ever really meet them, but it's just that there's that little incentive there to defeat them if you wish to. There are also some changes with Gondor and Dol Amroth specifically. Now, Gondor and Dol Amroth, because you are actually the same race as these people, well, obviously we're slightly more pure-blooded as the Dunedain, whereas they are more watered down. But anyway, because Aragorn is their rightful king, this is arguably Aragorn's own lands. We felt that the mercenary system didn't, well, I certainly felt, and Hummingbird didn't disagree, that the mercenary system wouldn't work as well for Gondor and Dol Amroth, because you'd want to be able to pump out the troops more in line with actually ruling a nation rather than liberating it. And so for Gondor and Dol Amroth, the old system is still how it works. So you train their troops directly from the barracks lines in the regions. Now, I appreciate many of you will say, but hang on, Gallu, you've just said that you did away with that because it encouraged you to attack your own allies. But to you, I would say that as a Northern Dunedain player, if you are arriving in Gondor and Dol Amroth at a time when they are still incredibly powerful, or dare I say winning, then you've essentially rushed yourself there, and then there's very little we can do about that. But for the average player, which we must focus this upon, the general player, you won't arrive in Gondor or Dol Amroth till long after they have really started taking a beating and are probably losing. So you will arrive as liberators, freedom fighters if you will, and each town that you save, you then can train the troops. Now, of course, there probably will be an element of backstabbing, like, for example, Dol Amroth might hold its 3 core provinces, so you can't then train on any Amrothians. You might really want them, and so you can, obviously, the only way then to go about it is to get them to lose somehow by either conquering them yourself or hoping someone takes them. But these places are so far away from the starting region, and I just didn't think that the mercenary system would work as well in these places, because if you do come here and you've liberated Minas Tirith, it would be such a pain to then learn that you can only train the troops as mercenaries. You only get 1 or 2 every sort of 10 years or something stupid, and you can't just actually use the populace who you have come and liberated. It just feels more thematic as liberators for Gondor and Dol Amroth. So that is the change to the Beacon of Hope system. And that'll be in effect, of course, with whatever the next version will be. And that also roundly concludes... Oh, no, sorry, there's 1 or 2 little final minor changes. Rohan obviously uses the mercenary system, but they're very elite units that you can train. The Royal Guard and the Guards of the Meadowsail, they still come from Edoras proper. You can't train their elite units as mercenaries. You would have to have liberated Edoras. Now, that may, of course, again, be what we've just discussed, in that you may actually be conquerors of Edoras, and it's one of those where you have to kind of just turn a blind eye, if you will. But having the Royal Guard and things, imagine Edoras has fallen to Isengard and you manage to reclaim it as a Northern Dunedain, and you're then rewarded with the Guards of the Meadowsail and the Royal Guard. And I think that's better than just, oh, I'm passing through and some of their elite units reserved only for the king have now sided with me. So there's a little change there. Similarly, the Fountain Guard and things, the AOR units for Gondor will only come from their AOR unit regions, so you still have to hold those regions to get to them. But there we are. Now, it may well be that in a few developer diaries I'll come back and tell you that we have now changed them all to be mercenaries, but I feel that it will likely stay this way. Now, one thing with the mercenaries is that in order to retrain them, you do, of course, need the region that they train from. If you are unaware, that's how mercenaries work. So if I can train a mercenary unit in Tir Thuin, let's call it bandits, and I take it away and I fight and it needs healing, I can only retrain it in a region that it can be trained from originally. You don't need any buildings, you simply need the region. So by just owning Tir Thuin, putting the bandits back in it, I would then be able to retrain them. Now, of course, this system means that without backstabbing these nations, you simply can't retrain those troops. And, of course, if you do attack those nations, you can no longer train the troops, which means you won't be able to retrain them anyway. But it was very much felt that this is Aragorn gathering volunteers to him and not building a standing army that he intends to move around and resupply and send back home to retrain and prepare. This is very much I'm on my way to battle, who is with me? And so what happens to them, happens to them. Now, some of these places you probably will get to liberate, but you will still then only train the troops as mercenaries. But by owning Bree and not being at war with Bree, I'd be able to retrain any Bree land units in Bree. Hopefully that all makes sense, and I've not sped through that too quickly. But there we are. That is the change to the Beacon of Hope. And that indeed concludes the campaign map side of this. So now we will jump over to the battle map, and I will start, first of all, by showing you what Mount Graham looks like when you attack it. Welcome to Mount Graham on the southern side of the mountains. So this is the new battle map. Now, actually, something you may be interesting to know, probably not. I have never actually seen this battle map, so this is a first for me as well. I should have checked to make sure it worked, really, but I didn't, so there we are. So here's the spur of the mountains. Obviously, you can't pass around that, so there's no running around the side. Although, is that part of the battle map? I'm not entirely sure. But you'll see, obviously, we're in a very mountainous area, so it's all very fitting. And then you come through this sort of glade, if you will, past the Angmar Towers, and then into the gate itself. Now, it does actually have a gate, which is nice, because some of the original Third Age Total War battle maps didn't have any gates, and I always thought it was a bit bizarre. But as many of you who have been playing Third Age or indeed Medieval 2 for a while now will know, custom settlements are buggy as hell. And so RK, our resident custom settlement provider and creator, team member for a long time now, he favours simplicity to ensure that they don't break. And I am 100% with him on that. So as you can see, it is just a large chamber within the mountains, splitting the mountain from north to south. Once you are in, you have got to fight up to this little plateau, so the defenders have a nice shooting range facing both gates there. But if you come in from the northern side, you're a bit of an advantage because you get that hill. Southern side, you're fighting up. And then, of course, it's just a straight shot to the square. But you can see all the caves and things taking you off into the mountains. It looks really good. I absolutely love this. Mountain settlements are always risky because the camera work can always be such a pain, as you've just seen there as we climb the mountain. And so you find yourself doing this where you're just jumping around all the time. But here it works splendidly. And once I'm in the city, as you can see, I can move the camera to my heart's content. And the only thing jumping me up and down is this little tiny hill, which is bearable, I would submit. Now, something I do note looking at this is we definitely want to change the Angmar town centre flag, because that no longer reflects them at all. A dragon and a hand. It's totally random. We'll probably just chuck the crown on a basic flag. But anyway, there we are. So that is Mount Graham, courtesy of Gildor Inglorian and some borrowed trebuchets from Gondor, as usual. If you want to just see the glory of the High Elves, there they are. Gildor standing at the back. That's not unique, that's just what High Elf generals look like. But there we are, so that is Mount Graham, an absolutely splendid addition to the custom settlement family, and one that I look forward to playing, actually. That's pretty cool. I like the towers outside the gate, and the Angmar flag is very cool. I like that indeed. And speaking of the Angmar flag, and indeed the banners, that is where we turn to now. So with Matt's essentially resident UI creator, who has done an awful lot of UI work for us now, he has created a slew of new banners, and we shall head over to the battle map and see them in all their new glory. Welcome then to the battle map proper. There's a few things to go over here, but before we begin with banners, first of all, a minor change to Khazad-dûm, which I thought I'd show off first of all, is that the Legion Shield Guard, Deeping Guard and Hammer Guard no longer wear capes. You can see on their backs there, clear as you like, which are now reserved solely for the later elites, the First Legion specifically. So the cape just denotes elitism, if you will, in the roster of the forces of Khazad-dûm. And so there no change to their banner, though. It's been that way for quite some time. So for the rest of the map, what we do have is a slew of new banners, as I say. So we're starting off over here with Mordor. And Mordor have been given, there you go, a new banner with the helmet of Sauron beneath the eye. It's sort of crimson red on a black background, so far away it just looks like black, really, but then when you get up close you see the markings of Sauron, which I think is quite cool. And again, following that same sort of torn and tattered banner that we've gone for them. And whilst we're on the subject of banners, I've never shown it before, but that banner is unique and specific to Sauron's model. So this is Sauron's battle unit. Of course, Sauron isn't actually present here because he's generated by the campaign, so you can't actually get him in custom battle, but you can get his unit, and it has a custom flag. So if you see that banner, that means Sauron is on the field, or at least his unit is if you're playing in a custom map. Next up, we have the Realm of Lothlorien, and there is theirs, if I remember what the pause button is, just so you can show you without it walking around. Because obviously it's got a grey colouring now, because Lothlorien are entirely described as being grey colouring. So we've systematically gone through, I say we, Hummingbird has systematically gone through and replaced all the colouring where possible with grey or this kind of limier green looking colour, rather than the bright green of the Woodland Realm. It's also now got the golden leaves of the Malon tree reflected, and if memory serves, this is an artist's depiction of possibly the House of Galadriel. It could well just be a fancy circle, but I'm fairly certain that is an artist's, possibly Tolkien's original design of the family crest of Galadriel. But anyway, the golden leaves obviously denote the Malon, and the grey denoting the bark of the Malon. So the Lothlorien banner, I think it looks really good. I'm really pleased with that. Very nice indeed. We can just keep it paused. I don't know why I was playing it at all, to be honest. Next up, then, we come to Dol Guldur. And you can see there, again, it's now the Eye of Sauron obscured by the trees and forests of Dol Guldur. With a tear in the banner that kind of looks like a blocky house, doesn't it? Anyway, there we are. So that's the Dol Guldur banner, representing the forest of Mirkwood, of course, but then the fact that they are still very much subservient to Sauron. And a green colouring overall as the tinge. Next up, we come to the Woodland Realm, and here we have the Maithur Ithawar, the Woodland Warriors, and theirs is now just a much brighter green. Again, the symbolism there is the denoting of Thranduil's family crest, if memory serves, and they've gone with arrows just as a simple signification of their more military history, with a very bright green banner, so you know there's now clear definition. That's not a word. There's now clear differentiation between the Woodland Realm and Lothlorien, which is perfect. Then we come to the Ar Ardanaim, who no longer have the symbol of Umbar as the mainstay of the banner, because of course they are no longer really an Umbar-based faction. They are they are wherever you want to be, and they come from the farthest south. Now the banner looks obviously best that way, but it replicates unfortunately by mirroring, and it's not as obvious on the right as it is on the left. But anyway, the Ar Ardanaim banner now represented by a grand ship, which is obvious from the iconography. They do still have the Umbar symbol. That symbol actually is called Umbar. That is why it is present. So it doesn't mean Umbar, it is called Umbar. The symbol's name is Umbar. And that's present. And then, of course, the star representing Numenor, because Numenor is in the shape of a 5-pointed star, and the star is very much the symbol of Numenor. And these are true sons of Numenor, so they've taken that as their icon. They've lost the large sort of balls that were on the base of the flag. I'm not really sure what they were for, but they were there, but they've gone now, so that is good. Moving across, we then have the Orcs of Gundabad, who the banner's just been sort of wrecked and shredded, but they still have the eye atop the great gates of Gundabad. Very, very instantly recognisable as Gundabad's banner. And another good one, that more sort of blood-stained as well, representing the warlike nature of them. And then, if I'm not mistaken, finally we come to the Goblins of Moria. Oh, and I tell you who I've missed, I almost certainly, is... No, Angmar's banner was there. That banner outside the mountain gates was that's just a totally separate banner. I think it might be for Battle of Middle-earth. Anyway, this is the Moria banner. So the mountains now present the 3 peaks of Moria, which, if you didn't know, Moria is the cave system, or the mansions of Khazad-dûm are built entirely beneath 3 great peaks in the southern Misty Mountains, and again the eye representing, of course, thraldom to Sauron. Once again, the flag and banner, that is, as you are seeing here firsthand, is always darker on one side than the other because of the way that they are generated. But there we are, those are the new banners. But that is not all to show you, so do hang on. We have saved the best for last, because there are some new voice clips to show you. And so we'll now jump over and get the voice clips, just playing those out, so bear with me. Okay, so for the first of the new sounds and voices, we return once again to Dunland. Now, our thanks go indeed to Jay McDougall, who did the voices beforehand, but unfortunately, because of the method in which they were recorded, they had to be converted to work with the game, and they lost a lot of quality. And that's no slight on him at all. The message that we were going for with Dunland was absolutely put across by his voice clips. But unfortunately, because they weren't recorded in the manner that the game wants them in, we had to convert them, and that is why they sounded crackly and just, it hurt the ears a bit. And that is nothing to do with the gentleman who created them. I want to make that plainly clear. It is unfortunate that they had to be converted, and so that is just where we were up to. But someone then came forth and opted to has asked if they could do some voices for us for some of the other factions that aren't represented, and they also had some Dunlanding. They also went to cover Dunland as well, so they have now been replaced with the new voice clips by I only know the gentleman as Special Sunday on Discord, and so we've got Dunland first, and then we've got Anduin afterwards. So I won't talk anymore, and we'll just click through, and you can see what they all sound like.
Oxes, united in wrath, they will pay. They will pay. They will pay. Spears, they will pay. Wolf's swords, the hills rise, wolf's swords, we will lead. Dunland's finest, Eisenmach. Spears, warband. Our honor will be restored. Unite the clansmen for the glory of Dunland. In the chieftain's name, stand with us. Hold your ground, huntsmen. Take back our lands. Huntsmen, spill the blood of Rohan. Spill the blood of Rohan. Trolls, ha! We'll make trophies of them. Horsemen, horsemen, Eisenmach. Come on! For Dunland, let's move! Take back our lands! Take their blood, wolf's pikes. Infantry!
They don't have the new voice clips.
Bring me a horse to skewer. Spears! Spears! Berserkers! Point us at them. Which way?
So there we are, some new voice clips. You can tell the quality is considerably better. They've been recorded in the exact quality that the game wants. So that's the best you're going to get, really, is what I'm getting at with that. But just very, very good all around. The other change that I brought you here to see for Ennard Wythe is that their bodyguard unit, which you can see, oh, there we are, standing at the back. They are no longer archers, so the bodyguard of Ennard Wythe now also throws javelins, which means Ennard Wythe's javelin roster has increased massively. I think they've got 2 extra units throwing javelins than they had before, and it was shown in the previous episode, but there's Ennard Wythe's new very cool-looking banner. So Ennard Wythe have now not got archer bodyguards anymore, javelins instead. And that is everything to show, except finally the Anduin voices as well. So now we'll line up the Anduin and we'll go through them instead. So here we are with the Anduin then, but just before we go on, something I've just learned today, which is absolutely annoying as sin to finally learn this, is that the actual unit voices are not dictated by the speech slider, but are in fact dictated by the special effects slider. So if you're wondering why in your own games, if perhaps maybe, and indeed for my recordings, if I'm wondering why the units always sound so damned quiet, it's because they are governed by that one and not that one, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it does mean that in order to have the speech very loud, the battle sounds when they clash with swords and weapons and things will be painfully loud. But anyway, here we are with the Anduin then. And again, I'll just click through them all and see you once it's done.
Ready for battle. Woodsmen. Warriors assembled. Defenders of the forest. Together. Together. Stand tall. Destroy the foe. Destroy the foe. In Fram's name, for Bayon. The beast howls. The beast howls. Awaiting your command. Awaiting your command. Destroy the foe. All right then. All right then. I suppose we'll fight. All right then. Watch out. Awaiting your command. To arms. Woodsmen, woodsmen, defenders of the forest. Greenwood foresters, wind, guide me. We move in silence. War awaits us. No orc will stand against us. Ready to fight. Men of the Vale, ready to fight. Ready to fight. Sons of Bayon, defenders of the forest. Sons of Bayon! We remember. We ride as one. Mounted archers. We ride as one.
So there we are, those are the Anduin voices. They do one also, the Aethiode do also say their own name at one point, but obviously you've got to click about 1 million times, it's random whether or not you'll get them. But there we are, so those are the new Anduin voices. A hint of aggression, but mostly endurance. Their voices are stubborn defenders, and that's what very much the brief we provided. Because the men of the Anduin are said to successfully defend off the orcs of the Misty Mountains against great blood loss, bloodshed. And so that is what's represented in them, a sort of grim determination to endure. They will survive. And that is the voice lines that have come across. So very happy with that. And then the very final thing before this episode then ends is that the Breland Militia, the unupgraded version, now have a sprinkling of farm tools amongst their weaponry as well as dedicated actual weapons, indicating that they are hastily gathered from the countryside. And there's a pitchfork that man is wielding there. So there we are. Those are all the changes over the past few months, and that concludes this developer diary. I do hope you've learned something that maybe you didn't know before. And that, oh, criminally, that's loud. And that this has been informative, and you're liking what you're seeing thus far. In regards releasing the next version, I appreciate that Imladris have been changed substantially, and there's a great drive for people to want to play that. So we may well look into doing, rather than waiting a year or something like that, we might consider releasing it a little earlier. But I can't give you any promises, of course. We need it still needs some polish work, and there's some other bits and bobs that we do need to do. But for now, so stay tuned. You might not have to wait as long for the next version as perhaps you waited between the release of the last version and the one before that. But anyway, for now, that is everything. So thank you very much for watching, if indeed you have, and until we speak again, dear friends, Navarre den Perimat Melonin, and farewell.